A tale of a boy's courage and a legendary creature. In present-day Scotland, two American tourists visit a local pub and are captivated by a famous photo of the Loch Ness Monster. An elderly man reveals the photo is a fake, hinting at a deeper story that intrigues them. They sit to hear his tale, set in 1942 during World War II. Young Angus McMarro lives by Loch Ness, torn between curiosity and fear of the water. He imagines wading in but is haunted by drowning visions. Instead, he gathers shells along the shore, thinking of his Royal Navy father who once described the loch as enchanted and mysterious. One day, exploring the shoreline, Angus uncovers a large, unusual egg buried in the sand. Fascinated, he takes it home and hides it in his father's garden shed before his mother calls him back. Anne and Angus's sister Kirsty notice Angus's withdrawn behavior since his father's absence. In the shed, Angus carefully cleans the egg, revealing a glowing blue surface beneath the dirt. He hides it again and goes to bed. That night, strange noises wake Angus. He sees the shed door wide open. Investigating, he discovers the egg has hatched, and a peculiar alien-like creature is scurrying around inside. Cautiously, Angus offers the creature a potato, gradually earning its trust. Seeing a wound, he bandages it and vows to protect it, keeping its existence secret. The following morning, military vehicles arrive. Angus briefly hopes his father is home, but Captain Thomas Hamilton informs them the Royal Air Force is taking over their manor for military purposes. The house will be a base to defend against a potential German invasion. Angus worries about his new secret friend's safety, fearing the soldiers may harm it. Angus checks the shed, finding it destroyed by the creature in its search for food. The damage intensifies his concern for secrecy and protecting his father's belongings. Trying to gather food for Cruso, Sergeant Strunk, the army cook, refuses to help. Angus improvises, dragging a garbage can to the shed, which Cruso enthusiastically devours. Angus names the creature Cruso, inspired by Robinson Crusoe. While Cruso eats, Angus researches animals, but none match. Remembering his father's tales of a mythical Loch Monster, Angus suspects Cruso might be the legend. To help Cruso survive, he pours water into a trash can. Two fishermen on the loch notice increased military activity. Captain Hamilton explains they are preparing artillery batteries against reported German U-boat sightings. Exploring the grounds, Angus encounters Sergeant Walker holding a dead deer, a grim reminder of the danger to Cruso. Alarmed, Angus hurries to protect Cruso and later finds the shed in disarray. Anne, reflecting on her husband's absence, is interrupted by Louis, a recently hired handyman. She tasks Louis with cleaning the shed and suspects Angus might be hiding a pet, which is not allowed. She asks Louis to handle it discreetly. As Louis starts emptying the trash can, Angus is stunned to see Cruso gone. Upset, Angus argues with Louis to defend his father's workshop, but Louis asserts it is now his duty to care for it. That night, Angus searches the grounds, calling for Cruso. Meanwhile, Cruso, now significantly larger, sneaks into the family manor and accidentally encounters Churchill, the military dog. After a chaotic chase through the house, Cruso escapes, leaving the household staff to blame the mess on Churchill and the military. As Angus begins to lose hope, he hears Kirsty scream and finds Cruso hiding in her bathtub. Angus reassures Kirsty that Cruso is harmless, and she promises to keep his secret, though hesitant. Kirsty notices the bathroom isn't working and asks Louis to check it while she gathers clothes that once belonged to her missing husband. When Louis politely declines the clothes, and reveals her husband's ship was sunk a year ago, and he is presumed missing. She explains Angus is struggling to accept his father's loss. Meanwhile, Angus and Kirsty try to keep the rapidly growing Cruso quiet, increasingly difficult. Louis arrives to repair the bathroom, and despite Angus' protests, Kirsty lets him in. When Louis sees Cruso, he immediately suggests it might be a water horse, a legendary being from Celtic mythology. The legend says only one water horse exists at a time, and when it grows old, it lays an egg, passes on its legacy, and dies. While on searches for the children, Angus seeks Louis's help to distract her. Kirsty and Louis pretend to be fixing the bathroom together. Anne grows suspicious and checks the bathroom herself, finding it empty. Cruso has mysteriously disappeared. Louis cleverly hides the water horse in the toilet tank, misleading Anne. Still skeptical, she accepts their explanation and leaves. As Anne heads downstairs, she runs into Captain Hamilton, who invites her to a dinner he's organizing as a thank you. She graciously accepts. Meanwhile, Louis advises Angus to release Cruso into the loch, insisting it's the safest place. Angus refuses, feeling strongly that Cruso belongs with him. That evening, Anne prepares for the meal, choosing an elegant dress she hasn't worn in years. In the bathroom, Angus feeds Cruso canned fish, but Kirsty interrupts, urging him downstairs to see what's happening. As they leave, Angus accidentally leaves the bathroom door ajar. Cruso, scrambling for the fish, slips out of the bathtub. Downstairs, military personnel and household staff enjoy dancing together. But Churchill catches a strange scent and darts off to investigate. Noticing the dog's absence, Angus and Kirsty realize something is wrong. Upstairs, Cruso roams the hallways until he encounters Churchill. The unleashed dog chases Cruso through the house, causing a trail of destruction. The chase leads to the hunting room, where Cruso is horrified by the sight of mounted and stuffed animals. Angus and Kirsty follow the sounds of crashing chaos, while downstairs Captain Hamilton and hear the commotion during the banquet. The chaos spills into the dining hall, with Churchill dashing recklessly across the banquet table, leaving destruction in his wake. Cruso manages to slip away unnoticed. Louis steps forward to apologize to Anne and the military, explaining he was chasing the dog. Captain Hamilton remains unimpressed and voices his dissatisfaction. Louis refuses to follow Hamilton's orders, leading Hamilton to demand Angus be sent to his room. Reluctantly, Angus obeys. Outside, Cruso cleverly disguises himself as a statue, successfully tricking Churchill. Cruso discovers a nearby pond teeming with fish and dives in to feast. Later, as Angus searches for Cruso, Louis intercepts him and promises to help find the creature if Angus returns to his room. The next morning, Louis notices Cruso has grown significantly larger overnight and remains in the pond. He takes Angus to see the creature, and together they transport Cruso to the loch, releasing him into his natural environment. Meanwhile, Captain Hamilton confronts Louis in the shed, accusing him of being a negative influence on Angus and warning him to stay away. On the water, two fishermen accidentally hook Cruso, only to have their small boat dragged along before they cut the line to avoid capsizing. Hamilton takes Angus under his wing, determined to mold him into a disciplined soldier. After days of grueling training, Angus manages to escape and returns to the loch, where a now fully grown Cruso greets him with excitement. Cruso invites Angus to ride on his back, helping him face his fear of water. Though initially hesitant, Angus gradually enjoys the experience, overcoming his fear as Cruso dives and swims underwater. Back on land, Angus notices a metal net being installed in the loch, clearly intended as a trap for submarines. Later, Churchill escapes his military handler and begins searching for Cruso. Angus persuades Cruso to hide just as Sergeant Strunk arrives, but it's too late. Strunk spots Cruso briefly before the creature disappears beneath the surface. Angus confides in Louis and Kirsty about Cruso, thanking Louis for bringing laughter back into his life. Overhearing this, Captain Hamilton is surprised to learn that Louis is a war hero with an untarnished record. At a nearby pub, the fishermen eagerly recount their sighting of the mysterious creature, hoping the story will attract tourists and bring economic benefits. The next morning, the fishermen return to the loch armed with a camera, determined to capture a photo of the creature. Meanwhile, Captain Hamilton takes Anne and the children to watch the military's cannon firing practice at the loch. Angus, alarmed by the situation, tells his mother about Cruso, but she dismisses his concerns despite Kirsty supporting him. During the cannon firing exercise, several shots narrowly miss Cruso, prompting Angus to attempt to stop the bombardment. Angus's interference enrages Hamilton, who scolds Anne for her son's behavior and sends the family home, believing the creature will not resurface after the attack. The fishermen decide to fabricate a photo of the Loch Ness Monster, which becomes the infamous surgeon's photo. As punishment, Angus is confined to his room every evening for a month. When the staged photo is published in the newspaper, Sergeant Strunk identifies it as resembling the creature he saw at the loch. Sergeant Walker declares his intent to hunt the creature. Kirsty discreetly helps Angus escape his bedroom with Lewis's assistance, and together they head to the loch, where Angus calls out for Cruso. Cruso emerges from the water, roaring fiercely and snapping aggressively, still traumatized by the bombardment and his near-death experience. Despite the risk, Angus attempts to reconnect with his friend but narrowly avoids losing his hand as Cruso disappears into the depths. Churchill's keen sense of smell leads him to the loch, inadvertently guiding the military there as well. Armed with harpoons, soldiers set out on boats. Cruso defends himself, killing Churchill and overturning the soldiers' boats in retaliation. One of the soldiers sends out an SOS, leading Hamilton to assume they are under German attack. He orders Anne and the children to shelter in the basement while he organizes a defensive response. Anne realizes Angus is at the loch and, against Hamilton's orders, decides to retrieve him. Meanwhile, Crusoe's attacks intensify, terrifying the soldiers. Angus wades into the water, trying to stop the chaos, but slips on a rock and falls unconscious, sinking beneath the surface. Cruso dives to save him and brings him to safety on the shore. Lewis desperately works to revive Angus while Anne and Hamilton arrive at the scene. Angus regains consciousness and is reunited with Cruso, who has now calmed down. Overjoyed, Angus embraces his friend and dismisses the events as fanciful nonsense, blaming Lewis for filling her children's heads with stories. However, her skepticism vanishes when she spots Cruso in the water. Angus insists the creature is peaceful, but their moment is interrupted by another cannon being fired. In a desperate attempt to protect Cruso, Angus climbs onto his back and rides him into the water, pleading with the soldiers not to shoot. And watches in terror as cannon fire continues to rain down. Hamilton, Anne, and Lewis race toward the underwater net as the soldiers persist in their assault. Angus, determined to save Cruso, guides him toward the net amidst the cannon fire and chaos. Amidst the storm, the soldiers mistake Cruso's long neck for the periscope of a German submarine, intensifying their attack. Realizing diving is the only way to save Cruso, Angus and the creature plunge underwater, just reaching the net in time. Believing they've captured a German U-boat, the soldiers begin raising the nets. Cruso pauses at the barrier as Hamilton and Lewis arrive, urging Angus to let his friend go. Reluctantly, Angus says goodbye to Cruso, his closest friend, and returns to his family. Cruso dives deep into the loch before leaping triumphantly, destroying the military equipment and disappearing into the horizon. The following morning, Angus and Anne watch the sunrise over the loch. Angus finally accepts that his father will not return and finds peace. Together, they see Cruso swimming away into freedom as Cruso releases a final majestic roar before diving beneath the water for the last time. In the present day, the old man finishes his tale, revealing that although there have been sporadic sightings of the water horse over the years, Angus never saw him again. The old man admits this because he is Angus. The tourists, satisfied with the story, leave the pub. Outside, a young mother searches for her son William, who is exploring the beach. William finds a strange rock resembling the egg that Angus once discovered, hinting that Cruso has passed on his legacy and left behind a successor destined to become the next water horse.